introduce our esteemed speaker, Ted Lai. Ted has been supporting AME for as long as I have been involved, and I think you'll find his intelligence, his curiosity about anything and everything, and his infectious positivity brighten any room or Zoom that he is in. Ted is part of the U.S. Education Leadership and Learning team at Apple, and he works with school leaders to leverage technology to transform learning. He's unafraid of asking and tackling the big, protracted questions facing teachers, schools, and our education community. Prior to joining Apple, Ted served as a classroom teacher, a professional developer, a coordinator of educational technology, a director of technology, and college instructor. He is the ideal person to lead our AME discussion around human-centered design. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you, Ashley. And let me just share my screen. Yeah, I'll do that. Hold on. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining as I figure out what I'm doing. Really, I'm a tech expert. Okay, so just a little bit about what I do. I'm an education leadership executive with Apple, and so what that means is I work typically with leaders, both administrators and teacher leaders, on the vision for learning, what you want the learning environment to look like, and how you want it to really be amplified by technology. One of the things that I always tell people is I've got the best job at Apple because although I work and support the sales arm of Apple for education, I don't sell. I'm there to really support and nurture as much as possible. So that allows me to create partnerships with other organizations like AME and really start to think through how can we benefit students to the greatest possible level. So I'm going to be doing a quick overview of human-centered design, provide an example that I actually did with a school district, and then have some hands-on time for you. Later on, when you break into your communities of practice, you'll have some follow-up to personalize the work together. So we'll be using a mural page later on, which is an agile design website, and I'll give you that link in a little bit. Okay, so human-centered design. For those of you who have never heard of it, or actually for those of you who have, just know that there are 3 different parts to the design process, and that includes inspiration, ideation, and implementation. And I want to make clear that today, just know that you could do human-centered design for days, for weeks, and it's an entire process. So for today, we're going to really focus on inspiration and ideation. We'll hopefully come up with a plan that you can take with you and continue to think through and implement at your sites. So our purposes, inspiration and ideation. To give you a little bit more on those sections, inspiration is where you empathize and begin to understand the situation. Empathy is really the foundation of human-centered design. It's really the process where you observe, where you're engaging and interacting with the end customer, so to speak, to really start thinking through what the true challenge is. And you need to be able to synthesize that information to fully understand what the problems are and obstacles. In ideation, you define that challenge or obstacle, and you begin to ideate. You begin to think through what are some of the solutions that really could maybe change this, maybe fix it. Ideation is about quantity. You want as many ideas as possible. So you never stop and think about one thing way too long because you just want to get as many ideas as possible, and then you sift through and figure out what are the best ideas to come together and begin to prototype. A prototype is when you bring together a few of the ideas, generally short-term, mid-term, and long-term type goals and activities that you can string together as some sort of cohesive plan. And then finally, implementation is where you take that prototype, test it out, see how it went, talk to people, empathize more, you iterate it, and you refine it. One of the most important things in the design process for human-centered design is to always withhold judgment. As you're empathizing, it's never good to listen to someone, hear what some of their challenges are, and think to yourself, well, that sounds stupid. So always withhold judgment. You're there to learn. Ask questions. The more questions, the better, because even something that seems benign, like your favorite color, could actually help you design a solution that is more personalized. As you find out information, you want to always look for patterns and then, of course, practice active listening. So the way this looks, that when I do this, and there are many different ways to do human-centered design, but they all follow the same kind of pattern. The way I do it is I start with inspiration, and I use an empathy map. And an empathy map that I use is really to put in the center, the person that I'm trying to design for, or the people I'm trying to design for, and really consider, what are they thinking and feeling? What are they saying and doing? What are they seeing around them? And then what are they hearing? So I want to get a general idea of everything, because what they're thinking internally may be different from what they're actually saying externally. What they're seeing, I have to ask about and really think through, what they're experiencing and interpreting. From that, I get themes. And then to begin the process of taking these themes, which are obstacles, and turning them into opportunities, which is one of the parts of human-centered design, reframing obstacles into opportunities, I use a sentence frame where I say, who needs what, because why? Who am I really designing for? What do they need? And why am I doing that? When I can do that, it also helps if I make sure that I check my ideas at the door and preconceived notions, and I really try to get to the core issue by asking the 5 whys. And 5 whys are where, whatever you think the main issue is, you ask why that's an issue. And whatever answer you get, you ask why again. And you continue to ask why until you get to the very core issue. And then finally, you do one more reframing of that into a how might we? So how might we fix this? And then you're off to the races on ideation. And I know I'm going fast, but don't worry, I'll go slower when I give the example. Ideation, like I mentioned, it's where you just think of as many ideas as possible. It's great if you have high quality ideas, but even the ones that, at first glance you might think, oh, that's kind of a weird one. It doesn't matter. Magic could be part of the solution, because 5 years ago, if you told me I would have a digital assistant who could schedule meetings for me or reminders, who could help, translate different things or tell me what songs playing on my playlist, I would have said that was magical 5 years ago. So magic is for sure one of the things that can be part of the solution. Ideation is just that, though, trying to push down any barrier and come up with as many ideas as possible. And again, from there you prototype. And for our purposes, we're going to end today with coming up with a prototype, but then thinking through what are our next steps. And next steps, we do the 5-5-5-55. And that stands for 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months. So short-term, mid-term, long-term. What are our goals? And 55 centimeter impact. Sorry, I have my family's from Hong Kong, and so I learned metric first. And so to me, when you have a face-to-face conversation, it's usually no further than or no closer than 55 centimeters. But nowadays with the way the pandemic is, it'd be way farther than that. So 55 centimeters from the computer, how about? But who are you going to bring in? Who are your partners in this process? Okay, so now let's do an example so that you see it a little more slowly. So I was working with a school district about 1.5 years ago, and they presented me with a challenge. They said, we've brought in all this Apple technology. We have a state-of-the-art video lab. But the problem is our numbers for the last 2 years haven't gone up significantly in our class. So we want to know what's wrong. Did we waste our money? Should we be trying something else other than Apple? They were just kind of going off asking as many questions as possible. So I asked them, have you ever asked students, why they join the class or why they don't join the class? So no one had. So we began doing that. We actually spent about a week asking students about why they chose the class or didn't choose the class. And so again, we went through that whole thing of, you know, thinking, feeling, saying, seeing, and doing. And what we found out after we did the empathy map was this. It was fascinating because there were students who actually didn't know about the class. There were kids in elementary school who absolutely loved video, but somehow it didn't continue. You know, middle school students absolutely stopped using video. There were 0 examples of middle school students doing video projects. So they were going into high school not having that same passion, right? So, you know, students weren't empowered to use video in their projects. Even if they did it now and then, it was more the teacher assigning it in elementary school, like saying, you're all going to create a video. And the kids would get excited, but that was it. They weren't empowered to say, hey, instead of that report, could I do a video instead? You know, so it was fascinating because there was a lot going on, and you can see some of the other key empathy pieces that I pulled out here. We also found, by the way, that the high school video class was taught in a vacuum. They taught the class. They weren't engaging with sports. They weren't engaging with any of the other visual and performing arts. They weren't engaging with any curricular areas. So it was just fully in a vacuum. And the other things we found out, you know, kids were like, oh, yeah, no, that class is only for video geeks. So there were definitely branding issues as well. So when we began looking at themes, what the leadership, what the teachers who were teaching the class and the leaders at the district office and the principal, what they found was they found 3 main themes. Number 1, branding issues. Branding issues, you know, in terms of how they really message out this class, how they attract people to it. They found that there was a lack of skill articulation K-12. So, you know, yeah, there was video in elementary. There was nothing in middle school. But the kids who were doing it in video, it was more of the, here's your iPad, go shoot a video, rather than what are the skills for you to plan this out? Partnerships were also lacking. So there were no partnerships with parents, community members, businesses, etc. No partnerships with, like I mentioned, the sports or the other visual and performing arts. So how could we develop that? So as we started looking at the who needs what, because why, they took these 3 themes and they came up with these 3 different who needs what, because why statements. First one, K-12 teachers need basic video integration ideas because then they will assign projects with them. Great. Students need to be encouraged to continue using video because they stop using it the older they get. And also, students need more structured skills in video because their videos will be more more clearly communicate. That's a tongue twister. Okay, so as we were looking at that, we had to choose one. I told them, hey, eventually you will tackle all of these, but we need to choose one. So what they ended up choosing was the students need to be encouraged to continue using video because they stop using it the older they get. And so I began asking them, well, why? And by the way, the first time I did this to them, I didn't tell them I was going to do it, and they were really annoyed with me because imagine how you feel when your kids ask you why all the time, right? It's the same kind of thing, but why helps you get to the core issue. So here was the process. Again, they asked, or they stated that students need to be encouraged to continue using video because they stop using it the older they get. So when I first asked why, they were like, well, teachers don't assign it. Okay, great. Why? Because students need to do a lot of writing. Why? Well, that's how the teachers assess them. Okay, why? Teachers also aren't comfortable teaching video. Okay, why? And the final one was that teachers have to feel like they're in control. So what was fascinating is we went from students needing to be encouraged to continue using video all the way down to what they felt was the core issue. As an organization, as a district, the teachers had full locus of control and basically students had no empowerment at all. And in a lot of ways, even the teacher's locus of control, it was very limited. So we began thinking of how might we questions. And one of the key ones that we eventually chose to move forward on, because you brainstorm as many how might we's as possible. The one that they finally decided on was how might we support teachers to empower students so they lead with tech and have more voice and choice. And by lead with tech, I don't mean lead with technical lessons. It was really lead with the idea that technology can open up opportunities. So when we went through ideation, these were just some of the things that they came up with. You know, having lessons and projects for students where there's discovery of the technology versus lockstep, let me teach you. Even though you're in third grade, let me teach you the tech. Because let's face it, kids will learn technology faster than you and me, but they need structure. It's not just, here, go learn it. It's, what did you learn? Let's reflect, let's share, so that now we're group mind sharing and can move forward together. So other things that we had ideas on, creating rubrics, show, don't tell. So projects where, you've got to show your learning rather than tell us what you learned. Having media showcases so that kids began to feel it's cool to actually create these projects. And I'm sure none of these are surprising to you. You're probably like, yeah, these are logical. Absolutely. But to a K-12 district that wasn't doing any of it, for them, it was revolutionary. So, as we thought through different things, we had to design a prototype with the different ideas. And so the eventual prototype they decided on for the next year was, let's change our professional learning for both admins and teachers. And we'll include video creation and creativity. So not only just showing them what's possible, but also having them explore and learn a little bit more and how to plan out a video. Because as they watch each other's projects, some are going to be great and some are going to be terrible and hard to watch. And the terrible ones are the ones that generally haven't planned it out very well. So, and then also supporting of creating video tutorials so that students have ownership of the learning. Okay, so there are action steps after I left, because again, as always, I usually don't stick around for everything because I've got a lot of schools that I work with. But in 5 days, they said they would gather rubrics and resources. In 5 weeks, they decided they're going to ensure that all counselors and teachers understand career opportunities and create lessons to help other teachers who may not know how to integrate video. In 5 months' time, they said that they wanted to integrate with different curricular and extracurricular areas. And that was one of the keys because, until you start getting out there, no one thinks that you're really that important. And then 55 centimeter impact. They said get other admins and leaders on board. So leaders meant teacher leaders. Admins, it was, can we make sure that we have every admin on board, all the principals at the sites on board. So that was the plan in a nutshell. Okay. So I'm going to pause right now, and we're going to go over to the mural. And if there are any questions, you're welcome to ask them. Okay.
Hey, Ted, I have a question. So, all of our AME teachers here, are thinking about, how is human centered thinking, like how is that exhibited in the creative industries? Can you talk a little bit about where you're seeing it and how it's being used?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that we're definitely seeing, especially with video, but more than video, it's really thinking through what challenges your community is facing and how might the creative industry that we're working in be part of the solution or bring awareness. So it's really trying to think through something bigger with what students are learning and going through so that they can feel part of the solution. The other thing that we're seeing, though, is, we use it all the time. When we design any type of workshop for educators or material to help with whatever level, it could be high school, it could be elementary, we're designing for the teacher, we're designing for the student and thinking through, what do they need to know? What do they already know? And what are the struggles? Yeah. I saw someone ask about the 55 centimeter impact. It's who are you going to partner with? So 55 centimeters is about the distance of a conversation, like not too close that it's awkward, but not too far away that, they think that you're afraid of them. Okay. The process. So how long was the process to get to that point? I worked with them for 3 sessions of about 2 hours each. I could have done it shorter, but I was really vested in this school district because it was relatively large, and um, they were ready to throw in the towel. They were like, maybe creativity is not the way to go. Maybe this video lab was a mistake. And it's like, no, that's, that's not the issue. Let's figure out what the issue is. So, yeah,
Ted,
always.
can I ask you a random question about?
Sure. I love random questions.
Okay, so have districts engaged you to do this process around distance learning and best practice and pedagogy? Because it's interesting how, as many of us know on the call, everybody's doing their own thing. It's like a free-for-all out there, and a lot of mandates that are not necessarily research-backed best practice and pedagogy. So I would be really interested to hear if you've been engaged in those conversations around, because this is an excellent process for that.
Yeah, there absolutely have been districts that have engaged us in this process, asked us for help. We actually ended up creating a guide to also help called Designing for the Future of Schools that we provide face-to-face, and we use the design process throughout. The funny thing is, as much as people need the help, a lot of people are not asking. And it's because they're kind of head down, let me just survival mode. Let me just get through this. And, I think that, I think it's one of those things that when people start to breathe a little bit, hopefully they'll move forward in a way to recenter their foundation. There was a question out there I saw that, difference between human-centered design and design thinking, it's the same. It's essentially the same. It got rebranded by the brothers, David and Tom Kelly. They first called it design thinking, and then they decided, once a lot of people jumped on and were doing design thinking, they wanted to make sure that it was truly centered on humans, and so they rebranded it as human-centered design. They also changed a lot of the language and went from 5 steps to 3, really, and simplified it a bit. Honestly, the 5 steps are still in there. It's just now within like 3 big umbrellas. Yeah. Lori's absolutely right. Same thing. Okay. I'm going to put in the chat the mural link. Now, the mural link will take you out to your browser, so you won't necessarily see me in Zoom, but I will continue sharing my screen just in case you ever get lost. Just know that make sure that if you're trying to add something to the mural, you're adding it in your Safari or whatever browser you're using, and not just looking at my screen. Okay. So, hold on. Really, I know technology. Can you still see my screen? And is there a mural there? All right. For those of you who have never used Mural, it's you can be anonymous. You don't have to put your name. Very easy to navigate. I have the instructions on the left-hand side for navigation. If you have a trackpad or a mouse, basically you're going to kind of zoom by doing a spread. And I think on a mouse, it's like a scroll wheel kind of action on it. It's a lot easier on a trackpad. You zoom in and hold on. Oh, and I just showed you how to create a little sticky. When you want to add an idea, you want to double tap and you'll get a sticky note. If you want to swipe around, you use 2 fingers to swipe left or right or up or down, and then that helps you navigate. So far, so good? Okay. Again, instructions are here on the left-hand side, where I've got a quote from Simon Sinek saying, "Alone is hard, together is better." And I have hidden some of the different pieces of this, just so you know. You do want to zoom in, just because if you're zoomed out and you double tap, you can barely see your little sticky note. So instructions are always in these yellow boxes. So for the first part, we're going to empathy map. And again, I give you a quick definition. Human-centered design, this is about the inspiration phase. This is empathy mapping. So I want you to take a moment and empathize with your colleagues here on this call. And think about the students you serve. And considering the fields that they're learning about, like what you're doing, being part of the AME fields. What are the challenges for students in remote or hybrid learning? So think about your students as they're going through this remote or hybrid learning and trying to do the given AME field that you're working in. What are students thinking, feeling, saying, seeing, doing, etc.? So I have several different boxes for you to be able to add thoughts to. And don't worry about repeating anyone's ideas. It's okay. And just start putting, imagine you were asking a student right now. See, this is one part that we have to kind of make up because we're not actually interviewing a student, which would be the best thing. But if you were to interview a student right now, what would they be thinking as they're going through remote learning and trying to learn technical theater, for instance, or trying to, work in dance? What would learning be like for them? What are some of the things they'd be thinking or feeling or saying or seeing around them and doing? So I'm going to go ahead and give this about 5 minutes, and I'll put a timer on. And if there are questions, please put it in chat or unmute and just say it. I'll try to look at chat as much as possible. It's a little bit hard because I'm on 2 screens.
I don't seem able to click on this mural while you're sharing your screen.
Make sure that you're actually looking at the mural in your browser and you're not looking at the Zoom of me showing the mural.
Right, I'm looking at the Zoom. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Oh yeah, it is similar to Jamboard. The difference being this was created for agile design workshops. So people who are doing human-centered design, so there are a lot of frameworks that are very specific to that. One quick tip as you're typing, sometimes when there are this many people, it will get sluggish. So just be patient. Once you finish typing, just wait for it to catch up once you're done before you move on. Or else when you click somewhere else, it'll finish the typing in a new sticky rather than the old one. And I'll go ahead and add the link one more time because I see that on the chat. Can I just say, you are not a shy bunch, because I have done this with groups of about this amount, and it's much more sparse a lot of the time. So I get easily distracted, by the way, because I suffer from ADOS, attention deficit shiny. And I notice someone is the visiting koala. That's always the prize animal for some reason. Like, everyone loves the koala. I mean, I love the koala too, but I think all of them are kind of cute.
They should get another AME mug.
Ted gets one. He can have a set. Ted, do you have birds?
I don't have birds. I do hear birds, though.
You do? Okay, I'm not going crazy, and neither is John over there.
Normally, when I hear something in the background, I will, remind people to mute, but I like the birds, so I'm totally fine.
I liked them too. They were calming.
I love that several of you are experimenting and finding some of the different features of, like different shapes of stickies or drawing on the note, which is awesome because I'm going to tell you, the one complaint I have with Mural is that it's very text heavy because it's mostly just sticky note type things or virtual stickies. Please do take time to look at your colleagues' your peers' different comments, because that might spur something else in your mind. Karen, I'm sorry that it's a bit much for your Chromebook. I know. It is a little processor intensive. On the iPad, you actually need a separate app, but it does work on an iPad as well. And it's easier to draw when you're using an iPad and the app than it is on your computer. We have about 7 seconds left. Okay, you can continue adding thoughts if you'd like, but I'm going to start talking now. So the next step really in the design process, and I'm going to open up my outline. Hold on just a quick moment. This is difficult because I have my monitor now on a lower level, and so I'm like trying to navigate this. So I'm going to open up the next section. This is one of my favorite little features of Mural, that I can hide sections. Wow, I see someone drew a very long line. I might delete that. I apologize. It's not that I don't like your creative expression. Maybe I'll just drag it lower or something. Okay, so the next step, again, you can zoom in and see the instructions as well, but this is synthesizing now. And so it's part of inspiration. And to be truly inspired by an empathy map is to start looking for themes. So this is what your ideation will be built on. So first, you think about themes that you're seeing. And themes are beyond just a single section. So not just what someone's seeing or what someone's feeling or thinking, but is there something that you see in thinking that also matches something else in seeing or saying that becomes a theme? So for instance, when I was looking for trends with a school on, so a different design thinking session I was doing, there was a school that was talking about how their teachers are not integrating technology for creative uses. And so as we did an empathy map, one of the things that we found out with teachers is that they were truly afraid. Also, they were going back to how they were taught. So, there are a lot of reasons for reasons or themes that you can find. So what you want to do is just, what big themes do you see up top? Birds, I like it. How about in the stickies? Okay, I see a lot of great themes coming up. And by the way, if you were doing this in a longer engagement, you might actually have people take the stickies and organize them, so that you now have it organized as themes. That way it's a much more visual representation. It's just one of those things where, I may be cutting back a couple of the different activities I might do in a face-to-face or a longer virtual session. And then the next part of this, though, in synthesizing the information and continuing to be inspired, but get yourself set for ideation, is to do your first reframing of a challenge. So when you take a look at a challenge, like, for instance, let's see, isolation, okay? When I see that as a challenge, how do I reframe that as an opportunity? So I might go ahead and come down here on the who needs what because why and add in a sticky and say, okay, the who. Well, isolation, I don't see anything specified here necessarily on just students. So I know teachers feel this way too, but I guess the brainstorm was about students. So we'll start it with students. So students need opportunities to feel connected with each other because they will feel less isolated while they're doing work. Okay. But I could also flip that to the teacher side of things. So on the who needs what because why, maybe it's teachers need to understand how to design opportunities for better engagement and collaboration so that students will feel less isolated. So just know that there's always multiple perspectives that you can utilize for the who needs what because why. In fact, I would challenge you to think through, well, what would administrators need to do, in that kind of a situation? What's the administrator role when it comes to making sure that students don't feel isolated? So, as you're doing the who needs what because why, think through how else could we word this so that we have complete buy-in, so that we have complete ideas on the marching orders for each of the different stakeholders. Do parents play a role in this? And in what way do parents play roles? Or do groups of friends play a role in this? So just continue to think and begin to broaden the who for the who needs what because why. It's very simple to always say it's about students. Yeah, absolutely. Students are our focus. That's why we joined this profession. But when it comes to solutions, what's everyone's part in it? Okay, so I'm going to talk less and have you continue adding ideas here. And again, if there are any questions, I do have chat up on one monitor, and you can always unmute, even if you have birds, because clearly I like birds.
Ted, it would be so interesting, and I can say this, a few of you have recommended some students. We're going to be hosting it's called Student Voices Reimagining Public Education. And we're hosting a student panel in April to have this discussion, and Ted's going to come in and facilitate this process with the student panelists to prep them for the thing and the public event. And it will be so interesting to see this. Can we keep this mural?
Oh, yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
compare it to the one that we do with the students with the same prompts. I think that would be such an interesting study almost, right?
Yeah, I would be really interested not just in the differences, but where's the intersectionality?
Yeah.
What are the things that students and teachers agree on? And how do we utilize that then to prioritize?
Yes, I love it.
And then I'm automatically thinking in my role, in supporting schools and supporting school implementations, how can I then be a better support for schools and districts to really think through how to leverage technology to amplify the connections or amplify whatever goals you have, to whether it's connecting or whether it's re-engagement. How does my role then change because of those things? By the way, the who needs what because why, anything goes. So, I've had ones where I've done this where people will put in something they think it's kind of tongue in cheek, like, administrators need to make sure that they buy the right technology, because we need to provide our students with the best. And they may be saying it semi-flippantly, right? Because they don't think it's going to happen. But the more administrators actually hear stuff like that, the more they realize that even things like technology choices shouldn't be done in a vacuum. They should be, more solution oriented in terms of, if we want this outcome for our students, it should predicate X, Y, Z, and not just in the purchase, but in the implementation. So, because I'm going to be openly admitting here that there are plenty of districts that have chosen what I think is great technology, like an iPad, let's say, or a Mac, but they're still not using it to its fullest, or they're not using the creative tools. And then they complain that, we've been pushing innovation, but our students aren't really doing much with it. Well, yeah, you're not using any of the creative apps. Of course, they're not going to feel innovative. And it's not just about the creating, it's an inquiry-based mindset, but they should feel that they can create a solution. Okay, great. So you're doing an awesome job. And I know that our time is just about up and ready to move on, I think, right? We have like 10 minutes or so until the communities of practice. So I wanted to give enough time. I see a bunch of chats, but you know what's funny? My eyes. I cannot actually read anymore because I'm now farsighted and nearsighted. I've been nearsighted my whole life, and all of a sudden now I'm now farsighted, and I actually can't read at the distance of a computer very well unless I like tilt my head funny. I told my mom, and she said, "You're just old." So thanks, Mom. So let me reveal, like I told you, ADOS. Okay. Let me reveal the last two sections so I can explain them. And this is what you'll do in your communities of practice, but I want to take time to explain it. So just know that on the right side, there's a way to see the outline where the instructions are, but the instructions are also here repeated once in the middle, once on the edge. So in your group, and I've labeled each group at the top, each community of practice, you're going to go ahead and choose one challenge. I know we want to solve everything, but choose one of the challenges down there of the who needs what because why. And then you can copy it and paste it up here, or you can retype it, whatever you feel like, where it says challenge. But then have a discussion. Take time to have a discussion of, okay, why? Why is this an issue? And then from that answer, okay, why is that an issue? And use as many whys as you need to. Maybe it's only going to take one or two. Maybe it's going to take all five. But eventually you want to get to the root cause. What is the root cause of this feeling of isolation, right? Because let's face it, so still taking the isolation side of things, I have done more FaceTimes with my mom during the pandemic than I did prior. So I've literally seen my mom more often now than I did when I could have visited her. So isolation isn't necessarily predicated by the fact that we are sheltering in place. So if isolation is an issue, why? What is the real root cause of this? So keep on doing the 5 whys as far as you can. And then from that root cause, again, now it's the second opportunity to take a challenge and reframe it as an opportunity. So what's the opportunity? And that's a how might we. So maybe, again, taking isolation, it's the how might we design opportunities so that we can connect, you know, and because maybe that's what it is that, you know, as again, not blaming it all on teachers, because a lot of it is maybe student empowerment, but you know, it's designing opportunities to feel like you can connect and feel like you're still collaborating meaningfully, etc. So we use the how might we framework to do that. Then if you keep on going vertically down, ideation. Ideation, again, is just as many ideas as you can. The crazier, the better. I've added in the instructions a few things like this is a brain dump. Quantity versus quality. You know, yes, we want quality, but that'll come. Quantity first and foremost. And then I do add a few questions here to guide you just in case you need it. These are not the only questions, but I'll read a few of them. Like, what would you do if you were in charge? Or what would you do with an unlimited budget? What would you do if you could collaborate with core curriculum teachers? How can the community or local businesses be part of the solution? What if your creative area could be leveraged in the solution? So, you know, if you're in technical theater, you know, whatever challenge you're choosing, how could what you do in technical theater be part of the solution now? You know, if you're in, you know, popular music and production, you know, in what ways could that be leveraged? You know, so think through not just the 5 whys and ideation, but now how do you personalize it according to your community of practice so that it's more actionable? And then from that, together, you're going to talk through, okay, if we could design something to try out, a prototype, what's it going to be? Let's choose a few of these good ideas. Aim for something in the short term, medium term, and long term. Aim for things that you know would be, would have impact. The more impactful, the better. So like, you're not looking for something that's going to be long-term, low impact, right? You're looking for things that are short or medium term that have high impact. So that's your prototype that you'll articulate what you're going to try to do. And then next steps, you know, as a group, and this is individual, by the way, this part, the next steps, what'll you individually do in the next 5 days to try to move on this? How about 5 weeks from now? What about 5 months? And then if you have a partner in crime at your school site or your district, who is that? Who's your 55 centimeter impact? Is there a community leader? Is there a business partner that you can bring in to help with this? And please, 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 as much as I want to help everyone, I don't want to see, you know, a dozen times saying, we're going to bring in Ted to do this process with us. Because as much as that would be really fun for me, there's not enough of me to go around. So who else is going to be in your 55 centimeter impact? Okay. Oh, and the question of, is this mural template available? Oh, I wish. So I pay for the lowest level of mural, which means it's an individual license and I can only invite people anonymously. It's a personal purchase that I made because I use it for a lot of brainstorming. Okay. Any questions at all? It's a lot, I know.
I have a question. I'm a community of practice leader. And so when we go into the breakout room, I'm just thinking about the best way how to facilitate this. Would I maybe find one person that is willing to be sort of our note taker, or should we like pile on like we've done before? Or your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I would say that for certain parts, like above when you're going through the 5 whys and choosing a single challenge, having someone facilitate that would be great. On the ideation, anything goes. That would be the one area where you want the whole free-for-all, you know, that moment in Animal House when everyone's doing a food fight type moment.
Thank you.
Yep. Great question. Any other questions? One last thing before we go into the breakouts. This is your time.
I have a quick question, Ted.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Are we supposed to accept cookies in order to make this work? Because I have not been able to make the mural work for me.
It should not need to accept cookies. Well, actually, I take it back. There may be functional cookies that need to be accepted, but there should not be any cookies that you need to accept, like advertising cookies. Okay. So check back, and then accept at least the functional cookies. Oh, and I see a lot of people saying that they love cookies. Accept the cookies, they say. Okay. What was I going to say? Oh, the one thing I want to leave you with as you break out is this is your time. So if there's something that you feel, oh, this is good, but it doesn't go to the root of what we want to solve in our community of practice, discuss it, and you can move in that direction and still go through the 5 whys and the ideation, etc. The goal is to have something that you can now take away and feel like, okay, I've got an action plan. Even though I didn't think that I could necessarily impact this, maybe I can find the people who can make a decision that it will impact this, or, maybe I can grow something at my site. So, this is about you. Yes, Gregory, absolutely. Mural is free for educators. Unfortunately, even though I continue to think I'm an educator, they think I'm not because I don't have a .edu account.
Ted, you're absolutely an educator.
Thank you.
This was incredible. So fascinating.